Solvitur Ambulando, The Adventures of Steve and Dixie by Stephen Breakstone. Snippets from my journal. Episode 14, July 21st, 1986, Monday. Well, we're in Texas, and guess what? It is hot. I've already seen quite a few dry creek beds, and I assume that this will be the rule rather than the exception. Physically, that is worse for Dixie than it is for me, but mentally, I suffer more. I become worrisome and anxious about the lack of water for her health and stamina. But I don't think she worries about such things. She may get hot and thirsty, but she seems to just take it in stride. And sometimes with her tongue hanging so low, she might step on it. Yesterday, I met Emmett, an amicable yet frail looking old man. He was sitting in a Phillips 66 gas station with the same qualities. We stopped in for water. Emmett and I sat for a while and chatted about nothing, and then some religious stuff. Emmett is a Seventh-day Adventist. His main activities are God and his 10-hour dailies of sitting in his hot, run-down gas station. Emmett didn't have much, but he insisted that I share his bologna sandwich with him. It was tasty, but different. Emmett and his family are vegetarians, and therefore the cold cuts are soybean. Dixie and I rested, watered ourselves, ate, and conversed. Then we left. Quick acquaintances are more common than new friendships. Still, Emmett stands out. His life seems so empty to me, but he's as real as anybody else I've met on this journey. It just blows my mind that someone could live like this, so simply, so blandly. On the other hand, perhaps with his faith he is completely fulfilled. If so, God bless him. My time with him stands out for some reason. We headed out of Atlanta, Texas, with no particular place to go, except, of course, northwest. There are different roads we could have chosen, but we head more west than north right now, just to stay in Texas for a while. Why? Because I never saw Texas before, and I want to at least see some of it. This sliver of Texas, northeast of Dallas, is nothing compared to walking through the heart of this fascinating state. But perhaps another time. Peter and Barbara Jenkins walked hundreds of miles in the middle of the heart of Texas, and they didn't make it sound very pleasant at all. I need stimulation, not an additional challenge this summer. Maybe I could walk it enjoyably during a Texas winter, but again, walking across America is my life, not penance. So we'll walk west for a while and then head north towards Oklahoma. Heading north sounds cooler in my mind. That's good enough these days. Later. We left Emmett trying to understand the world we live in. There is so much, so many people, so many differences, and what does it all mean, I wonder? I have the time to think about such things. It's all probably something very simple. Nature seems so complex, and yet it really is just the repetition of, well, different species living and dying. This trip, mentally and physically, seems so complex in many ways, and yet all Dixie and I are doing is putting one leg in front of the other a lot and meeting other people and other species, going through their day to day lives. All of us are just living and ultimately dying. I feel as if there's something I should be learning and understanding from all this out of the ordinary experience I'm experiencing, and yet perhaps there's nothing to think about. When I meet the kind of people that I've met the last 2 days, I attempt to understand the ever ambiguous, well, something, but I only end up realizing that perhaps there's nothing to understand. Some things are just as they are. Or, well, or maybe it's really so much deeper, but from my view, I can't see it all. Sometimes it feels like I finally discovered the something I was looking for. I don't know, the real America, the meaning of life. And what I realize is that my discovery is not necessarily all that poignant. I don't know. Maybe with more time, maybe with more miles. I'm recording these thoughts going through my head just to be able to look back someday and check in on the things I pondered on this long schlep. We continue to walk to find answers to life's little mysteries and that somehow my mind needs to wonder about. Also, we continue to walk because it is something to do. It seems better than sitting in a gas station every day for the rest of my life. Of course, Emmett seemed content enough. Maybe his faith is enough. Maybe there's something to learn here. If so, it's not obvious to me yet. I need more. Side note. Now in my 60s, I reflect on these broad,
inarticulate and undeveloped thoughts, even after editing for clarity. I consider that I was a relatively mature, yet I had a young, wide open mind exploring my meaning of life, or to discover a tangible passion and a path. Today, perhaps I would use the word a purpose. I'm aware that I had the great fortune to grow up in a stable household. I was provided a good education and had the support to go in any career direction I would have wanted, including acting. But on a related note, as a teen, I also became aware that I was exposed to contradictory values, ideas, and role models in Metro New York City, which led me to ponder that there had to be more to life than getting married, a career, having children, retiring, playing with grandchildren, and then death. Granted, that's a very limited perception, but something about that observation that I experienced sunk in. And ultimately, I guess, was motivation for doing what I was doing and thinking what I was thinking. I find that reading and listening and reflecting back for this project is actually very joyful and thought provoking for me. Yeah, as you can imagine, of course, sharing my emotions with the public's a little strange, but perhaps there are people who can appreciate my journey and maybe get something poignant out of it for their own journey, just like I did by reading of others' off the beaten path journeys.
July 22nd, 1986, Tuesday. There are no surprises on the plains when it comes to rain. It may come fast at times, but you can see it coming and feel it too as the wind picked up from nothing to something. It was almost time to call it a day anyway yesterday, so I hopped over and Dixie crawled through a barbed wire fence and we went into a little woodland. In the tent, I'd be protected from the rain, and in the woods, we were protected from the wind. We were ready for the storm. Thunder, beginning as a far off rumble, grew louder and louder and more ominous. We were waiting and waiting for the inevitable. It was coming. I wasn't worried, but the anticipation was intense. It's coming. It's coming. How well would this nylon tent keep us dry? I did wonder if I had a false sense of security about that. And then the inevitable finally dropped everywhere except on us. All around us, the rain fell, hard at times, watering the countryside, filling little holes in the road where Dixie will be able to drink and maybe even for me to cool off. But strangely enough, not a drop fell on us. Everywhere else, this mini and fast moving storm dropped water, except on blessed us. We were left dry. Cool. Turned out to be a dry, comfortable night in our tent, nestled in some trees, quite private, as usual, and not too far from the road. Perfect. We woke up to an overcast sky today, a day we have been wishing for. Oh, not too hot and the sun hidden by a thick carpet of clouds, a day where I feel I could just walk forever. At this rate, we'll be in Seattle tonight. Later, we stopped in Naples. Just wonderful to be able to walk at leisure without being dictated by the weather and the sunshine and walk when we want, rest when we want. It was a pleasure to walk this morning. And then we stopped when we decided to see Naples. Naples, Texas, that is. When you say Naples, people think of the one in Italy, but this is Texas. Make sure you mention that. Evan, a man in his 40s, greeted us outside the cafe. With him was Joe, a man a bit older, retired, and just enjoying the good life in this tiny northeastern corner town. Another man, Joe, stopped by also to give Dixie $5. Evan got a kick when not only did I say I was born in New York, but I said a southern word as if I had been saying it all my life. I said, I love the South. Y'all been so friendly. You hear that, Joe? I love it. A Yankee saying y'all. Well, I'll be. Well, I picked y'all up from being in the South the last 10 months. It's a very handy flowing word and just naturally has become part of my vocabulary. I'm glad I made Evan so happy. Later, although it was not as hot as it usually is earlier today, Texas has felt hotter and more humid. It's very taxing. And with fewer trees beside the road for occasional shade and less water with easy access, I am pushing myself beyond what I thought would be my limits. Still, without any better ideas, I'll keep walking. I still want to walk at least a total of 2 months. So we get up every day and walk towards the point on the map I expect to get to by day's end. I always create a goal of where I want to get to, usually passing through a town at some point. But boy, has it been mentally and physically exhausting. Some things are easier than a month ago, but some aspects are getting harder. I really appreciate the kindness of strangers I meet, but I'm going to need more than that to keep me motivated. Later. I have discovered that one of the most disgusting smells in the world is that of a dead and still somewhat fresh squashed armadillo rotting in the direct sunlight of a 100-degree day and 90+% humidity. I won't try to explain the smell, but to put it mildly, it is not pleasant. And a really unpleasant experience is after finally finding a shade tree for an extended break on this road, and then removing my and Dixie's backpacks, unrolling the sleep roll for both of us to relax on, and then removing my boots and socks, and all prepared for a well earned nap, and then having the slight breeze we had been previously thankful for shift ever so much to reveal the tragedy on the road. It is hard for me to completely express the exhaustion I feel on some days, so I have to record this. The shift in the breeze had made me realize that a dead animal was only about 12 feet from where we were. A former armadillo lay squashed just beside the white line. I didn't have the energy to move. And it wasn't as if there were other trees to choose from within sight. So we stayed. Later. Yep, I was able to ignore the smell and napped soundly, as did Dixie. Good for us. That is an example of how exhausted we get. I wonder if this ability to recognize and tolerate the smell of dead animals will be useful in my life someday. I sure have seen and smelled my share of death the last few weeks.
Side note: if you ever smelled a dead, decaying animal, especially, but not exclusively, on a really hot and humid day, then perhaps you know how putrid the odor, and I need not say any more. But if you haven't had that experience, I'll just state this. The smell is such a powerful and unique experience that I almost kind of recommend experiencing it if you have even the slightest bit of a curious mind. Yet, on the other hand, I also suggest one try to avoid that odor at all costs. And thank God for vultures.
July 23rd, 1986, Wednesday. The last few days I've had a rope around my boots. My $100 boots are defective. The soles are detaching from the boot. Not good. Very bad. My boots are my tires, and it's like trying to drive with a flat tire, not having a spare tire, and it's many, many miles until the next gas station. Obviously, it's all I can think about. It's hard to ignore. I tried for a while. I can't anymore. I have been told that the only town with a store that sells boots or shoes I could walk long distances in would be Commerce. So that is where we head. Damn. If the rope shreds, well, again, or the boot really falls apart before getting to town, I don't realistically know how I will continue to walk. I guess I should give myself credit for using some rope I used for the tent stakes to try to get me through. Still, that's little consolation. Later, good fortune brought me to friendly James Curly Matthews, owner of Russell's Shoes. Curly is a slim, dignified, and most importantly, a warm man, a quality I greatly welcomed as I was feeling strange and uneasy. I know on such a journey one learns the value of the intangible, especially because right now I have very little in the way of material things. But what little I have, I value and rely on greatly. I need each and everything I have, especially my pack, my tent, my Swiss Army knife, my canteen, and my boots. And Dixie, of course. I spent months studying and deciding what pack, tent, equipment, and boots would be the best for me. In these areas, I could not afford to skimp, and I bought the best I could afford. These boots, the Ocelos, were bought based on weight, strength, support, durability, breathability, and water resistance. There is much value in that they are easy on and easy off. Having one of my tires blow out has really thrown my vulnerable mind off course. I am on a tight budget, and this gas station had tires, but not exactly the right kind for my journey. I wasn't thrilled. But something is better than nothing. Russell's Shoes has a wonderful collection of boots for its customers, none of whom were walking across the continent in a 100-degree temperature that lasts past 5, 6, and even 7 o'clock in the evening, which was being reported in Dallas. I had an excuse to be miserable today.
Side note, notice I didn't mention a sleeping bag. I owned a good one, but trekking through a southern summer, I decided that all I would need was a lightweight bed sheet to wrap myself in. Hey, on some nights that was even too much. And as for a pillow, I stuffed the tent sack with extra clothing and then wrapped the sack with a shirt. For my purposes, it worked well and, most importantly, reduced weight. I slept on a 5/8 inch foam rubber camping sleep roll, and that was an absolute necessity. That's it for now. Peace.